Damnatio Memoriae, or Condemnation of Memory, was a ruling in which the Romans could change the memory or posthumous reputation of an individual, or in some instances, erase them from historical accounts in total. Condemnations could be initiated by the emperor, senate, or the army, and consisted of things like fasti, in which the names and titles were removed from official lists, and imagines, wax masks that were represented the condemned to be banished from public display. Fundamentally, Damnatio Memoriae was conveyed through defaced, mutilated, changed, or warehoused portraits, the changing or removing of inscriptions, and in some cases, defaced coinage. In many cases, the condemnation can be confirmed through historical accounts, such as in the cases of Livilla and Messalina, which we will focus on in our video. For imperial women, the condemnation was not as simple as being deemed an enemy of the state, as was the case with most of the imperial males that had been condemned. For the women, condemnation and silence measures often came from misrepresentation of failed plots in which these women were complicit. The idea surrounding women and their political transgression in Roman literature often had to do with adultery or sexual malfeasance, which makes the situation surrounding their condemnation sometimes unclear. The author Varner cites S. Wood as saying conspiracy and adultery can be closely linked and need not be mutually exclusive. Looking at Damnatio Memoriae, there seems to be no gender-related evidence that the outcome of condemnation for imperial males was different than that of females, as both suffered the destruction of statues, inscriptions, and portraits in the same manner, and historical sources indicate that imperial women were condemned for many of the same political reasons. Imperial women, however, were also condemned as part of collateral condemnation, when their husbands, brothers, or fathers were condemned, or as a consequence of disputes with the reigning emperor. The physical evidence in the form of statues and portraits can be verified to have been the product of mutilation and not of natural or accidental damage, because the condemned artifacts were usually warehoused to remove them from public view and in turn protected from the damage that nature and time would have done.
Agrippina's sister-in-law, Livilla, suffered a damnatio during the reign of Tiberius for her alleged involvement both in the murder of her husband, the emperor's son, Drusus Minor, and in subsequent plot against Tiberius himself. Livilla was born sometime between 14 and 11 BC, the only surviving daughter of Drusus Moyer and Antonia Minor. She was first married to Augustus' grandson, Gaius Caesar, and after his death she married Drusus Minor, to whom she bore one daughter, Julia, and twin sons, Germanicus Julius Caesar and Tiberius Gemellus. Drusus died in AD 23, reportedly poisoned by Livilla and Sejanus, the Praetorian prefect. Subsequently, Sejanus, although only a equestrian origin, wished to marry Livilla in order to strengthen his ties to the imperial house and legitimize his own potential claim to Tiberius's imperium. But Tiberius would not permit the marriage, and Sejanus was eventually executed in AD 31 for plotting against the emperor. Charges of adultery with Sejanus and complicity in the murder of Drusus Minor were then brought against Livilla, and she was either executed or forced to commit suicide. Clearly, Livilla must have been complicit in Sejanus' plot to overthrow Tiberius. Livilla is the first imperial woman against whom the Senate brought formal sanctions, voting to condemn her memory and decreeing the destruction of her image. During the period of her ascendancy, Livilla would have been honored with numerous portraits. As a result of the senatorial sanctions against her memory, her name was erased in inscriptions and her portraits obliterated. Sculpted portraits can be securely identified as Livilla, and as K.P. Earhart has convincingly demonstrated, the repeated attempts to identify portraits of the Lepisa and Malta type as Livilla do not adequately take into account the nature of Livilla's damnatio. However, her likeness has been plausibly identified on 13 jewelry pieces. The pieces are remarkably consistent in their portrayal of Livilla. In several of the pieces, Livilla is assimilated with Circe, underscoring her position as the mother of the potential heir to the empire. One instance, Livilla is shown in the likeness of the goddess Pac. In most cases, Gim portraits as small-scale imperial images must have been privately held and often escaped the destruction that befell sculpted and relieved representation of the condemned individuals.
Valeria Messalina, the third wife of Claudius and great-granddaughter of Octavia, was also officially condemned by the Senate for her part in a plot to marry Silas, allowing him to take over imperial power from the aging Claudius. Silas, Messalina, and 8 of their co-conspirators were executed. One of these associates was rumored to be Messalina's lover, Nestor. This type of rumor alludes to the way an imperial woman could suffer character assassination with allegations of sexual misconduct with males of lower class status. Messalina in modern times is depicted in film and fiction as a promiscuous sex addict with an insatiable lust. Messalina's images, similar to La Villa, were sanctioned by the Senate, and in this case Tacitus records as Damnatio, and it is confirmed with the inscriptions with Messalina's name removed. In other physical evidence, historians conclude that a statue of Messalina was defaced, with the head being removed and replaced with that of Agrippina the Minor's head. For imperial females, Damnatio Memoriae, or Condemnation of Memory, was not different than that of the imperial males. The busts, portraits, statues, and inscriptions of the condemned are defaced in the same way, and stored out of public view to remove the individuals from historical account and memory. Women could, however, face collateral condemnation for just being married or related to an individual that was condemned for any reason. As we can see, the Damnatio Memoriae didn't work completely, as we still know of many individuals that were to have been condemned. But that being said, we may never know to the full extent all of the Romans erased from history.